So hello. So I guess I'll give it a couple seconds for anyone to join if they're going to be joining in. But I guess it's a good time to be saying hello to anyone that's joined us. And yeah, it's great to be with you guys. So for our first Black History Month chat with myself and our Curriculum Manager of Performing Arts, Ethelinda Lashley, and a former pupil, a former student, and now budding actress, Kimberley. So I will let you guys introduce yourself and tell a little bit. 1 minute. Who am I? You don't know who I am.
Exactly.
I am Vice President of Activities, Victoria Browning. So some of you may know me, some of you may not, but I am Vice President of Activities this year, and I am in charge, of activities, societies, and trying to keep things fun for you in this virtual world we live in. So I'll hand over to Ethelinda. You can do an introduction.
Okay, hi, my name is Ethelinda. I'm just wondering, do we want to tell people that they can put stuff in the chat, or
Absolutely.
so I don't
Yeah.
know. So if you do have any questions for us as we're chatting away over coffee and water, you can put some things in the chat. We're here with you for about an hour or so. Yesterday we did have a wee practice and we were talking for ages, so you might want to switch off at some point. As Victoria says, I'm the curriculum manager of performing arts here at Edinburgh College. I've been a member of staff here for about 20 years. I've been in Scotland now for 30 years. And I originally was born in Barbados. My parents died there and I was adopted and brought to London, where I was brought up in Fulham by my great aunt, actually, who has now passed. I think you'd ask, how did I get here? I got here through work, really. I trained in dance at the London School of Contemporary Dance and subsequently managed to secure a job in Dundee at Dundee Rep Dance Company. Back in 1989, so we are going back a wee while, and then became a freelancer, and then started to lecture and teach in Edinburgh and Scotland, and secured a position at the college. So I've been here a good long while, up in Scotland and at the college. I'll pass on to Kimberley.
Hello, my name is Kimberley. Like Victoria said, I'm an ex-student of PASS. So I started my journey in Zimbabwe. I was pretty much born there till I was about 11, moving on to 12. And then I came here to live with my mom and my sister. So along the years, I just kind of pursued acting because I grew up a very dramatic child. So it was only natural that I pick a career that furthers that. So I did some youth theater stuff when I was younger, some acting lessons, and kind of maintained the acting interest throughout high school as well, much to the annoyance of my African family, because who's pursuing acting? No, I'm the first. So the last year of high school, I applied for PASS in Edinburgh College. I initially applied for the HN, but then they were like, no, you need more development, so NC. And it was great. It was really great. So I stuck it out for the 3 years, and now I'm here.
And how about yourself, Victoria?
Well, yeah, guess I should tell you a bit about myself. I have lived in Britain all my life. I was born in London, so my mum is of Caribbean, but we've not really lived there at all. So still waiting to go and explore that a bit more. So I'm looking, But I am a student. I was a student last year on the HNC media course, so doing television. So we're all very active, very performing-y. So I'm loving being at the college. I'm loving this role in the college. Is a great difference from what I was doing last year. So I don't know. I don't know what more you want to know about me. Feel free, if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments and we can get on to them and let you know a bit more about ourselves if you don't know what you want to know about me.
I'd just like to pick up on what I suppose something that Kimberley just said is that, to the annoyance of your parents, that you decided to work in the performing arts. I'm probably the same, because I'm probably the only dancer in the family, because that's where I started as a dancer. And it's always quite odd, really, where there are a lot of I suppose our parents and so forth of the previous generation that really don't feel that creative industries generally, or that line of work, has any substance to it at all. Being a dentist or doctor or lawyer or architect or something like that seems to
when
be.
I tell people I'm in television, it's like, oh, so you're an actress. It's like, no, I do camera work, and behind the scenes it's a little bit more background. But yeah, it's not really, people expect you to just be in the front line in the actress or the acting world. There is a lot that's not necessarily expected of us. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were your parents saying to you, Kimberley?
So it was just mostly my mom, because my mom's a nurse, and so is my sister. I think when I applied for the HN, they were quite on board if it was the HN. And when I was like, no, I've been pushed back to NC because they want me to progress a little, it was a very big conversation. A lot of tears were there. But I was just sort of like, I don't think I'm good at anything else. And this is just what I've wanted to do since I was a little girl. I'm not a nurse, I never liked math. So it was just a lot of perseverance on my part and just being like, I'm serious about this. And they were just like, if you're sure, go ahead. But, there's better careers out there that have a definite trajectory, essentially. But yeah, that was the battle.
Well, I suppose we're sort of really here, sort of talking as three women of colour, and navigating white spaces. And the title of that came from a blog, I think, was it, that you wrote, Kimberley? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So sort of when Black Lives Matter kind of restarted, I was going through a lot mentally, just kind of processing the last year of college and how towards the end it was just so mentally draining, and the microaggressions that I faced over the years. And I was just kind of going through it over and over again. And I thought, you know what, if I don't find a way to just find a way to go through this, it's going to be something that's stuck in my head for a long time. And I don't really want that. So I was the only Black girl throughout the years in the course. There was one Black guy, but he kind of dropped out halfway through. And that had a lot of challenges in itself. So yeah, the blog post, it wasn't even meant to, I didn't really intend for a lot of people to read it. I didn't know how it would be received. I just wrote it as a way to
get it off your chest.
Yeah, to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
And then this all happened, and it was crazy.
I guess I would want to ask about what you felt were some of the things you experienced while being, as you said, you were the only person of color, the only Black girl in your course. So what were kind of some of the things that you felt you came up against during that time?
So there's a lot of microaggressions, like I said. And one comment that, that I'd get quite a lot was, you're quite arrogant. You can come off as being quite arrogant. And like I was saying, that never really sat right with me, because I sort of noticed a theme. Whenever something good would happen to a white person, they were allowed to have the space to be happy about it, to be happy about it, brag about it a little. But if I did that, it was just a common theme for it to be taken the wrong way. And I would sort of try to lessen myself over the year and conform, be a little bit quieter or something. But it seems people just didn't like me more for it. So there was really nothing that I could do to appease anyone. Yeah, so that's one aspect of it.
Yes, that's stereotype.
Yeah,
Sorry, carry on.
no, I was going to say I could relate to
Mm.
that sort of sense of isolation. You know, when I started training in dance back in the early 80s, you know, I was training in a predominantly white environment. You know, there were a few, you know, black girls and, you know, people from mixed heritage and so forth, but predominantly, as we say, that sort of the idea of going into the performing arts or being a dancer, you know, there weren't that many of us that went along that you know, road, that journey. And sort of the, you know, talking about microaggressions at the time, I mean, you know, I wouldn't even know what microaggressions were. You know, it wasn't something that I knew there was a term for that. And so I probably put up with quite a few disparaging remarks, I would say, from maybe my ballet teacher, who, you know, would comment on the size of my bottom or the size of my legs or something like that. And of course, I sort of just took it on the chin, because it was something that I thought to myself, well, take that on board. You're really lucky to be here. You started this journey. But these microaggressions, these thoughts, these, you know, what people say, you know, you do hold inside of you. You know, it's something that you carry with you.
And they
And I
become
always,
doubts, I feel. They become
yeah,
doubts in your own mind and in yourself. Yeah.
well, that's right, because I think I moved away from my authentic self.
Yeah.
I tried to, as you say, you know, lessen yourself.
Mm.
I sort of, you know, tried to become more white, even though it wasn't possible, because look at me, you know, it's not possible to do that. But, you know, within my mannerisms and things that I did, and, you know, and people always comment on the fact that, oh, you know, for a black girl, you speak very well. And you're thinking, well, you know, well, what am I supposed to say? How am I supposed to speak? So yeah, I can relate to that. And you do, it's something that you carry with you as a burden in that way, because there's nothing you can change about yourself really in that way. You can't change the color of your skin. You are what you are.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose, you know, your experience might be slightly different, Victoria, because, you know, from where you grew up.
Well, growing up, I grew up in quite a rural little place in Scotland. It was Balfron. It's the tiniest little village. There's nobody lives there. But I guess in my high school, I was the only person of color. That it was just me. My first 5 years, my first 5 years, there were no other people of color in my high school. So it was an experience, I guess. And from that, I never really took on board that maybe I was a little bit different. The only time you really notice is when you see your class photos or this. So when comments would be made, I guess I kind of, they would be considered microaggressions. However, I just took it as me being a bit sensitive. Like when something was said, like, you're quite loud, you're quite like boisterous, quite forefront. I kind of took them as just, oh, I'll just be a bit more quiet, I'll just be a bit more subdued, more like you're not sure how to take these things. Like I always feel like when someone makes a comment or something, maybe I am just being sensitive, maybe the way I'm handling it is just me, maybe they're not meaning it like that. But yeah, I guess it's the same experience. It's just knowing that we all do have the same experience. I guess we just all have handled it a bit differently.
Yes, exactly. And you know, going back to those you know, photos, I remember Kimberley said something about when you were at school having your photographs taken.
Oh my God, just being the only one. Because like I said, I only came here and I only did a month of primary school. So there was a whole photo album over the years that, you know, I wasn't in any of those. And sort of towards the end, I'm in the corner, like at the school dance, I'm just like standing there, like a sore thumb. Yeah, it's it's quite funny, but it's the way it is. Because I know you both can relate to that as well.
Absolutely. And I remember in conversation, Victoria, that you were talking about your daughter as well, sort of being at school with her colouring book.
Yeah, this was when she was in nursery, and it's a funny story, but it really hurt at the time. She was
Right.
in nursery, and she was colouring in. Everyone had done pictures. It was like Mother's Day or something like that. It was something that they were all drawing pictures for their mums, and she came home and she had a picture, and it was just different. So she handed it to me, and I wouldn't have noticed, but she says, "Mum, I've done this picture for you. I couldn't draw you because there were no brown crayons." And oh, okay. I was a little taken back to start with, but then I thought about that more, and that's my daughter's name. At her school, there are people in her class of different ethnicities. So the fact she wasn't able to draw me means they weren't able to draw themselves, or they weren't able to draw their parents, and that quite hurt me. So I got a pack of pencils together, a pack of ethnic pencils together, and I handed them into the school, and everyone can draw themselves now. That's that sorted. But yeah, it's just little things like that, and you don't know how that. I guess that made me feel quite upset. So I'm thinking how those kids in the school felt, not being able to, I guess it's these things. It's thinking about how they make us feel more than. Yeah, so we need to approach the subject, because if we just let them go unchallenged, all these little things, and just think that it is us being sensitive, then it could affect someone else. It's not just for us.
That's right. You're right. I think that there's a lot with the Black Lives Movement, because of what had happened with George Floyd, where we've had years and years of civil rights and activism and so forth, but it does feel as though that this could be a sea change, because we've got a lot of people who are standing up, who are finding their voice, to be able to, not aggressively push back in a way, but just point out that we need to change, our perspective. And also, I suppose you don't know what you don't know. It's about teaching people who don't understand, our perspective. And that will only happen if you have that conversation in a way.
Yeah.
And I think it also happens, within sort of ethnic groups as well. Have you heard of the term colorism?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you understand of that?
A lot. Just from like growing up. So I've always been a bit of a movie geek, like growing up. That's how I wanted to be an actress as well. And kind of looking back, it's very white focused. I was talking about it with a friend of mine. Most of my favorite actresses and actors growing up, I didn't realize were all white. And like really looking at it, I was like, how do they really inspire me? They don't. And like that integrates itself into like my career right now. My agent kind of sent me a self-tape a few months ago. It was going to be a movie about an African girl in Ireland seeking asylum, and she was asking me to audition for the lead role, and I was like, I've never been considered for lead in anything in my life. And I remember sort of like a wave of insecurity and doubt, like for a few hours, just kind of came over me. Like, I'm just always used to assuming that I'm going to be the chorus or something like that. Yeah. So that was really tough at the time to just accept that, I can be lead as well. It's possible.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think I remember, when we were speaking about it, you had said something like when you got the email through that, that they were looking for a particular type of, of Black person, whether they needed to be slightly lighter skinned or so forth.
Yeah. And I mean, when I was in college, people would come, like industry professionals, and they'd be like, of course there's going to be more roles for you because you're Black. And I totally accept that. But now that I am seeing some of these casting calls, I just wonder, am I the right type of Black that they're looking for? Are they looking for something a bit lighter? Or, if you're not dark, really dark skinned, to fit this certain mold. You know, all these things are just coming to head. Because I think you were the one, Ethelinda, who kind of said that, like, that might be something that's coming up, looking for the right type of Black, essentially.
Well, that's right. I think, you know, that idea. I mean, you know, I'm can be quite open. You know, my husband, you know, is white and Scottish, and you know, but there have been sort of incidents in the past, you know, I suppose within my own ethnic group where I was considered sort of too dark, and whether that was by other Black men or by other light-skinned women, you know. So as well as experiencing, you know, probably some, as you say, microaggressions or overt racism from people of other ethnic groups, even within my own, I would say, you know, culture in that way, it's, you know, how light or how dark your skin, you
It
know,
does exist
determines
within it, yeah.
how you're treated, you know. And I know we can go to the caste system and various things like that, but it's very difficult to navigate not only white spaces but Black spaces or brown spaces. It's, you know,
I think I'm
you
seeing
know.
that a lot more recent. I've always been the only Black person navigating in white spaces, so now I guess I'm trying to navigate in Black spaces. For example, like the Facebook group we've set up, the BAME group we've set up, and it's, I feel I wanted to press it because I feel that people need a space to speak. They need a space that's for them. But then I feel slightly, I don't know, like I don't know, getting a bit too, I don't know, like I'm interfering, I guess, because I don't necessarily feel I have the same experiences, the same lived experiences as other people of color, like as other Black people. So I think it's just knowing that those differences do exist, even within being a person of color, being a Black person, there are still those differences between us all. And we sometimes,
Exactly.
even between each other, don't feel the same.
Yes.
So there is still difference, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, I think people sometimes externally think that, well, you're all Black, you're sort of all the same, but there are these complexities within cultures as well, in that way, that we all have to navigate. And you know, and there are, I was thinking back to a story, you know, about, well, for me, I suppose, maybe being with, if I was going to be asked out by another Black man, for example, they might consider me too dark, you know, in that way, and are quite open to say that, you know, themselves, which in itself is very confusing, you know. But you know, people like what they like. You like what you like in that way. But I think all of these things, you know, having the opportunity, as you say, the Facebook group, you know, being able to talk about how you feel, you know, is all about educating ourselves, each
And
other.
sharing our experience, I think, to show other people that you may have a different experience from the next Black person, but your experience is still valid. It's still the experience of a person of color. So I think just sharing those experiences and getting those conversations is very important for us all.
Absolutely.
And I think, like, navigating, just like you said, dating and colorism is, you know, there's been so many videos that I've seen of, let's say a Black man goes around interviewing other Black men, and it's got titles like, "Are dark skins underrated?" or "Black girls or white girls?" And, you know, there is this preference for lighter and curlier haired and, you know, softer and more feminine, because the two are synonymous apparently, which isn't the case. But, you know, when you're exposed to things like that, it can be hard.
Absolutely. Okay. I think I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball in and ask about what are our thoughts on things like white fragility and white supremacy.
Wow.
That's a big topic.
Victoria, you can take it away.
I don't know, Ethelinda. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a curveball for us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I think it's important for not just white people to know how to handle conversations, but us as well. I think that sounds very, yeah. People of color and Black people can sometimes push certain aspects of the conversation, and it can be quite off-putting. However, I think the conversations need to happen, and opening those conversations and finding ways. But we spoke yesterday about how tiring sometimes these conversations can be, how exhausting for us to have to, keep putting the conversations on the table and getting doors slammed in faces, and
Trying
it's
to educate.
and you don't want to be pushing education on people. People don't learn that way. They don't learn through having things pushed on them and being forced into things. People need to be open to learning and open to changing, and when you're constantly going up against a door, it's difficult, it's tiring.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think sometimes it's, for me, it's maybe about going, I suppose, round the back as opposed to right up at the
Through the
front. Yeah, that's right. Well, I think, you can introduce people to cultural differences through many things, whether it's through fashion, through music, through art, all of these things. I remember as a dance lecturer at Edinburgh College, I would always take the opportunity, as a choreographer, to maybe discuss with predominantly, my white students at the college about the injustices that are in the world generally, of course, from my lived experiences as a Black woman, and we would use things like Maya Angelou's poetry or Alice Walker's work. And one year I used a piece of, an experiment actually called the Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes experiment by Jane Elliott. And her experiment was based on whether if you had brown eyes, you were treated differently to someone who had blue eyes. And you can find this on the web somewhere. But it was quite interesting when we started just looking at within the predominantly white group, just the differences that were just between them as white, students, whether they had brown eyes or blue eyes or curly hair or straight hair or dark hair and so forth. So teaching about differences, as I say, you can take it, from round the side by, I suppose, speaking to people who are similar about their differences that they have between them. And then you can go on to further conversations, about different specific cultural differences and specific ethnic differences as well. And also that sort of brings in the idea of our different beliefs as well within the cultural context that we have, because we do have sort of we're brought up with these different beliefs because of the cultural context that we have grown up in. So I think you're right, education is the key, but there are lots of ways that you can approach it in that way.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of hard to navigate how to approach race discussions with white people as well. Because in my experience, I found that it comes from them not wanting to accept what role they could play in racism, whether or not that's conscious or subconscious. So it's met with a lot of defensiveness of like, well, I have Black friends, my blah, blah, blah is Black. And it just derails from a lot of the points that you're trying to make. And it's quite emotionally taxing as well. You have to relive your trauma for the sake of educating people. Yeah, because I remember I was with 3 of my white friends, 2 of who I would consider quite close friends. And I was just talking about my experiences with racism, and it did so much in making me feel invisible because one of them was sort of going, well, you know, when I went to Morocco, I experienced weird looks. So, you know, when people look at you, I don't think they're doing it because of racism. You're thinking too much about it. So, you know, I got weird looks too. And that's actually a microaggression on its own because it makes you feel invisible and invalidated. So I think the white fragility just comes from not wanting to accept that they do benefit from a racist society as well without
Yeah.
realizing it.
I think
Yeah, and
sometimes it's very difficult for people to admit that they might have that unconscious bias, or there might be something inside of them that maybe they wouldn't, because they don't want to see themselves as being a racist. That's not a nice thing to be labeled. And if they could think, well, if they do have black friends, they're not going to want to consider themselves a racist. They're not going to want to consider that there might be anything in them that's slightly, do you know what I mean? So I think it's difficult for people, but telling them that those things may be there, they may be unconscious biases, but knowing that they're there and combating them and finding ways around that is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to educate you to tell you you're bad. We want to help make this whole world a better place. I think it's not just a case of telling you you're a bad person, because I don't feel anyone's a bad person. I think the whole point of education is to help people. It's not to tell people you're bad, you've done this wrong. It is to spread knowledge and educate people for the better. It's not for any nefarious purposes.
It's about awareness, isn't it? It's about, you know, it's about awareness, and it's about a little bit of empathy as well, I think, you know, which I think can be difficult. I mean, when someone says, oh, well, as you know, one of your friends, or it's one of my friends have said this to me, says, oh, you're black, but I don't see color because you're just my friend. And you're going, well, actually, I want you to see my color because I'm black. And actually, it's really important to me. So if you don't see my color, you're not really acknowledging who I am. So are you a real friend? You know, and I think that fragility, that defensiveness that sometimes comes to the fore from, you know, white people, white friends. You're right, sort of. You know what? It sort of almost shifts the focus back onto them again. It's about their hurt and about how they feel about things, as opposed to, excuse me, you know, move the camera back over a little bit. We're talking about me. So absolutely, and I think we're in a better place. But I think, you know, we've got a long way to go. We do have a long way to go. We've definitely got a long way to go. And I think what you said, Kimberley, about, you know, white people have benefited from slavery for many, many centuries. This beautiful city that, you know, that we're in here in Edinburgh would not be what it is if, you know, millions of black people, you know, hadn't died on the seabed on their journey from Africa to the Americas in that way, and you know, with the exploitation of a whole race. Really, you have the exploitation of a whole race. And I think I was listening to Radio 5 this morning, and someone phoned in and said, well, you know, black people, it's just their victimhood, they're just carrying it and so forth. And you just get angry, and you just think, you know, this person, probably you'll never change this person's mind, really. But that doesn't mean we can't have the conversation and, you know, and open up for those people who do want to talk about it in that way. You know?
And, you know, yesterday I was sort of talking about class and racism. I think a lot of people, like a lot of white people, see they've been disadvantaged maybe class-wise. They didn't grow up so privileged, but they start comparing that to your experiences by saying, well, you know, I've went through a hardship as well. And I say, no, I'm not trying to take away from that point, because, you know, you can't compare struggles. But think about Black people. They have being Black and then maybe being lower class on top of that. And then you've got the LGBT spectrum as well. So it's not about taking away from each other's struggle. It's just about saying, well, can we highlight this point right now? Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
It's not a game of top trumps. It's like trying to solve all of these problems, not just like, well, I have that one too, so that's that. We can write that one off. It's not top trumps. One doesn't cancel out the other.
Yeah.
It's a case of working towards all of these things. Like,
that's right. It's not that way, absolutely. I know, and I think, you know, that there are the sort of those negative stereotypes, you know, that come with pigeonholing people in that way, you know, and I think, you know, here we are, 3 Black women, you know, confident, successful, and so forth.
With such a great, amazing platform to use to get this word out. Like, I didn't expect myself personally to have this platform to be able to speak about race and the struggles we've had with people. I've never expected that. I got into media for being behind the camera. Like, I didn't want to be on the other side of the camera telling people about things. But what an amazing platform as 3 women of color to be able to share our stories and to get this out of there. So I think that when it comes to pigeonholing, I didn't feel I was, I don't know, maybe from some of the microaggressions, some of the little things I'd experienced growing up, I didn't feel like this was the thing for me to do, like to get into, it's not to this position, a position in the Students' Association where I'm representing people. I didn't know who I felt like I could represent, but I did it and I managed to succeed. So we should never pigeonhole ourselves or feel like we're stuck in a space where we can't get out of, because it's what you make of it. So
absolutely. And I think, you know, well, I suppose there are 2 schools of thought. First school of thought is that we have, as you say, the opportunity to you know, to be role models in a way, you know,
that's my goal, is to be a role model for my little girl. She's so excited that I have this position. She's, you work for college, Mummy, and you've got all these students, Mummy. I'm like, sure, that's what you want to think it is, okay. But because I'm looking up to us and being the role models.
I think so. And I think, you know, I'm always saying, see me, be me, you know, in that way, you know, because there aren't that many of us here really that are in these positions. And I think, you know, it's part of our responsibility, I think, you know, to be able to share the success in a way, you know, and to demonstrate that you know, you can be anything you want to be, really. You just have to work hard. I mean, my mum used to say, well, you're gonna have to work harder than your white friends. I said, well, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that because I've got a lot of energy. But, you know, absolutely, I totally agree with you there. I've sort of started asking questions, haven't I? But I'm sort of very sort of conscious of the time and so forth. And I think one of the things, you know, we're doing this because of Black History Month. You know, Black Lives Matter, all of this huge movement. What do you think, you know, we want to see moving forward? What are the things that would be good to, you know, to move the conversation on from, you know, from a conversation to either allyship or activism, or where are we going? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about yesterday was Black mental health, which isn't taken that seriously. I've talked to a lot of mixed race friends and some Black friends about it, and, you know, struggling with things like depression or bipolar just isn't taken quite as seriously as, you know, some white counterparts. So I'm just wondering if that's something that should be focused on moving forward. Or
especially this year, I think Black lives have been at the forefront of quite a lot of traumatic experiences. I think it's been very traumatizing for Black lives this year. So I think Black mental health should definitely be on the forefront of our minds moving on.
Yeah, and just shifting like the focus from slavery, because a lot of Black history is seen as being slavery, when there's so many things that are coming out of Black people, like music, you know, dance, arts, all that kind of things. I think it should definitely be celebrated a bit more
It's
rather
like
than just slavery.
the only Black history is slavery, but slavery isn't just Black history. Slavery included
Yeah.
white people as well. It wasn't just Black people. It's funny that. So slavery is just history. It's a part of history. So
Mhm.
it's remembering all the other parts of history that Black people were also involved in. That we don't need to just write. Just this is just Black history. The goal is just to have history as history, to teach history as history, and for everyone, no matter what race, color, creeds, no matter what your sexual orientation or your belief, you fit into that history. You always have. It's just finding that hole where you do, and celebrating those victories within your own history, rather than just
Absolutely.
all of the negative aspects and just
Mhm.
every year just pushing the negative side of Black history. I think it's tiring. It's tiring to just focus on the negative all the time. So I think definitely moving forward with Black History Month, it needs to be more positive. It needs to be more celebratory and uplifting, and celebrating all the wonderful aspects of what Black people have contributed, rather than just the negative sides and the struggles that we've gone through.
Well, that's right. I mean, whether they're physicians or doctors, architects, artists, there are so many successes, and as we're saying, particularly if you've got young children yourself, is to be able to demonstrate that these are all the things that you can be if you want to be these things. Being grounded and obviously knowing your history of slavery, I think is very important. But I think everyone needs to know that it's not just white or black. It's, as you
Yeah,
say,
something it was just
it,
history.
it
Yeah.
is. It is absolutely. And I would hope that the goal of from Black History Month is that you take the month away, so it's not just a month. It's something that happens. It's embedded in the Scottish curriculum,
Yeah.
as part of that, and it's a shared history, as you said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
until
Because
then, we'll keep celebrating Black History Month.
Yeah,
We'll keep getting it out there and giving you all the things we can.
absolutely, absolutely. And I liked what you were talking about, Kimberley, about the mental health aspect as well, sort of the health and well-being of
yeah.
of many, of course, different cultures, but we are focusing on Black history at the moment. And and I think I told you a story about when my son was ill, um,
Yeah.
and I took him to the doctor. Um, and so this is general health, not just mental health. And I took him to the doctor, and I was quite surprised by this. I thought that we thought he had maybe had meningitis, and the doctor had said at the time, says, well, all you need to do is you need to roll a glass on his arm, and if his pink rash shows through, um, then that's possibly a signpost that he might have meningitis. And I remember turning around and saying, yeah, but if I roll a glass on his arm, you don't see the pink rash because he's got brown skin. And it was only at that point, I think, when we're talking about health generally and mental health, do you sort of realize the prism that health, it's all focused towards white skin or white people,
Yeah.
and that really there needs to be more investigation or sort of more research done on how particular maybe illnesses, aspects of illnesses maybe affect sort of different cultures, and trying to find
Understandable.
different ways of being able to, if someone's got meningitis and they've got very dark skin, don't tell them to you know roll a glass over their arm and see the pinkness, because there's none. So what else are you going to do? What else can I do? That was quite interesting, and I'm just wondering whether there's a further conversation about whether it's mental health or health in general,
Mhm.
to do with our cultural heritage in that way.
Yeah.
I think there's,
Well,
going back to what you said about mental health, and then I was thinking about, it just popped into my head, there's some of the stereotypes that are put on Black people in particular are negative and violent and loud and aggressive.
Yeah.
And some of those are things that would flag up mental health issues. But if you just pigeonhole that that's just someone's characteristic, that's yeah, it needs to be looked at for those aspects. That's dangerous. Yeah.
Well, one aspect of that, like kind of really negative stereotype, is strong Black women. I feel like that's done so much to just kind of drag me down over the years. In my article, I sort of talk about how people don't stand up for you when it could be so easy to. You know, in primary school and high school, I was just kind of having trouble fitting in, and just that was due to not relating to people at all. So it was just harder to make friends, and my mental health wasn't great. So I actually remember one time I went to a teacher crying because someone had just been racist to me, and she said, just sit down and like write about it or something. And I did. I wrote like 2 pages about how I was finding it hard to relate to people because I was Black. And she goes, okay, hand it to the headmaster. And I went to reception, and they're like, we'll just take the note. Thank you, we'll pass it on. And nothing was, I didn't hear much about it after that. And, you know, in class, there were people being racist, and I was visibly upset about it. And some girls would be like, you know, I don't think anyone's doing it to hurt you. It's just what they find funny. So I didn't even realize going to the teacher was an option, because people were just telling me, no, they saying the N-word out loud, you know, that's not to hurt you. That's fine. So my mental health kind of plummeted in high school a lot. You know, no one tried to intervene. So I think Black youth's mental health just isn't taken seriously if they're not quite, you know, white and subdued and demure, I want to say. So I think there's something to be said about that.
I had an experience in high school also that at the time I didn't necessarily flag it or do anything about it because I didn't see the need. I was in like first year high school, and it was an English class, and we were doing a book. I think it was possibly One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, something like that. And my teacher, we were all getting ready, we'd been sat down, and the teacher asked, now Victoria, would you like to do a different text, or would you like to leave the class for this text, because there's some issues that you might find in it? And this had been in front of the whole class, just called out, and I just sat there and just, no, that's fine. But that's like, it scarred me, like that she would call me out like that, and it put me on the spot. And was I to say, no, I would like to do something different? We hadn't even started it. I would like to do something different, just in case I get triggered, or it's yeah. But that's made me less likely to speak out against things, or less likely to flag little things up when I feel that there's someone in a position of power. But it shouldn't be the way. I felt like because she was my teacher, I couldn't say anything to her. I couldn't call her out for that. But but it definitely has played on my mental health, and we just don't think about things like that. Just small things that are seemingly insignificant. I don't want to say insignificant, but seemingly insignificant from her standpoint. And it's affected me so greatly. It's just,
Well, exactly. And I think, you know, as you say, you say it's small, but so even let's say it is small, but if you're getting something small on a Monday and small on a Tuesday and small on a Wednesday, it becomes this
by Friday, it's like suitcases bearing you down.
Exactly. You know, and even things like getting on a bus or something like that. I mean, and we're laughing because you've probably all experienced it. So there is this oneness, really, with us. You sit on a bus, and the bus is quite crowded, but there is a seat next to you. And there will be an individual that will get on the bus and will prefer to stand and squeeze, even though you moved your bag, to say, here is a seat for you. And you can just see how uncomfortable, like if they sit next to you, they're going to turn black. If they sit next to you, that's it. They will be contaminated. we're sort of laughing about it, and I'm so glad that you can actually, because I think the next time I get on a bus, which won't be for a long time, probably because of COVID, but when I do, I think I will see it slightly differently, because I have for so long felt offended, and it's that little thing, you know. You think, but what's the matter with me? Here is one
do I smell? Like,
yeah. Or you sort of, and I suppose sometimes it's a generational thing, and it's an ignorance thing, really. But you know, I'll get up, you know, to move for someone who's maybe slightly elderly to sit down so that they don't fall over, and they'll refuse to sit on the same seat that I've been sitting on. You know, quite bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre
Or even when they
behavior.
stare at you for just a bit too long, you're like, oh, is it because I'm black? Like what? You know, you just question every single thing.
I found moments when I was walking with my little one in her pram when she was just a newborn, a tiny little newborn, and she would be in the car seat all like coodied up and cozied up, and people would walk past me and my partner, and he was white. So they would walk past us and they would see them kind of looking at us both, kind of taking us both in, and then as they went by, trying to look in at the car seat to see the baby. And it's just little things like that. It's out of a place of curiosity, but it's just funny. And you notice people doing it. Like they maybe don't think you'll notice, but you do. So, and you never see them doing that with two white people and looking in to have a wee sneaky, oh, I wonder what colour it is. Like, yeah.
Absolutely. I know sort of these, and I suppose that's, you know, talking about these things. If we don't talk about them and people don't hear them, they maybe don't recognize that they're actually doing that, that's part of their behavior. And they might check themselves next time and actually take
or come up and
seat,
talk to me. That would be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Come up and ask me the question. Or when they'll look at your hair a bit and they'll want to touch it, and you can see them, and they're curious, and come and ask me, and then by all means touch it. But don't just look or try and do it slyly. Like there's little things.
Yeah, I think there was a period in high school where I wore my hair quite natural. Well, I wore it natural for a long time. And we were in woodwork class, and these boys were sort of making a game of coming behind me to like try fluffing my hair up.
Oh, can you feel that?
Yeah. Like, oh my God, how is it so soft? And like looking back, I'm like, that didn't feel nice.
No.
Or did more to like single me out. Like my hair's different. Thank you for that.
I know, absolutely. That makes me remember that the years of being here in Scotland and always having to travel to Brixton or to Birmingham to get my hair products.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Or even makeup, you know, trying to get sort of decent foundation. I mean, I would say it's only in the last 5 years where you can now
walk into a counter and they can actually test you and give you something that matches. It's wonderful.
Exactly.
It's wonderful.
You know, if you think about it, well, I mean, and I'm sort of going back a long time because I'm much older than you, but I do sort of remember, you know, not being able to get a good match, you know, for foundation or something like that. And, you know, and I suppose we are now much more progressive. So, you know, you're not experiencing those same things. But when you do think back on it, you think, oh my goodness, why not? You know, we've actually always been here, actually. You know, it's not like we've just sort of, you know, been plonked down, you know, like aliens. We've always been here. But I always remember that I would be, if I was going down to London or something like that, I would come back with a suitcase full of various things that I knew that I might not be able to get.
I go once every few months through to Glasgow because I live in Falkirk now and there's nothing I can get here. Nothing. So once every few months through to Glasgow, do a big haul. I'm still looking for somewhere to get my hair braided at the moment. So anyone with any suggestions for hair braiders in Edinburgh,
have a few, I mean, I can braid hair.
The comments.
So
there you go. There we go.
But there's a lot of
finding our niches in places. Like it's always difficult. Yeah.
And I over the years I was like, if I don't do my own hair, you know, it's expensive to get your hair done, so you have to just try yourself. My mom was like, you can learn So I learned.
Well, I can do my little one's hair, but doing mine is more difficult. She has lovely mixed hair. It's much easier. It's much easier to handle than mine. So, but
Yeah.
Gosh, how are we doing for time?
I think we're coming to, and yeah, I guess if we round up our goals for Black History Month moving forward, and then I guess that's our hour come to an end. I think we'll need to schedule some more talks in.
Absolutely.
Definitely. There's a lot more to be said.
Absolutely. I suppose my goal is that, one of the things is Black History Month is no longer a month, and I know that that's going to take some work, and that, Black history becomes embedded in our curriculum here in Scotland as something that, we just see as an everyday thing. It's nothing unusual. And I think that there are sort of, movements towards that. I think there are people who are working towards that, and it'll be seeking them out in a way, to lend our support, or provide opportunities where we can actually maybe use some of the good resources that will be created, so we can sort of move forward with that debate about Black History Month. I don't know, how about you, Kimberley?
I would say, I mean, I agree with everything you've just said. My interest is definitely more rooted in the arts, especially just having done 3 years of college. We do live in Scotland, but there's Black people in Scotland, and there's a lot more theater, Black theater, to be explored. Not everything has to be white centric. Over the years, I just kind of find myself doing roles that I'm like, this isn't made for me. Why am I trying so hard to relate to this? So just a lot more arts that are Black centered to be taught, and have a nice balance of both. Because Black people create beautiful music, create beautiful theater, create beautiful dance, and I would just like a lot more exposure to that in drama schools and colleges and general life. So yeah, that's I don't know about you, Victoria.
I'm basically the same. I just want more in education, more in art, more in celebrating Black people. We're all people. We can all be celebrated. I think celebrating people as people, by all means, but promoting equally as much Black people and people of color as you do as white people. We can find an overwhelming majority can often be put on us of white culture and white art and white media and white television, and I mean just getting that healthy balance so that more Black people do feel that they're represented, that they can see people that are like them on telly, in music, in theatre, as you say, things like that, in ballet. That's a very important one, seeing more Black people. That it's like all of us, we can now get ballet shoes that are actually our color. It's just the little things like that, just the inclusivity of making sure that everything is open to all people at all times. I think that's important for moving forward.
Yeah, I think just diversity, just generally. Yeah, absolutely.
I think because there's a lot of things that I would have benefited from just as a little girl if I'd seen more Blackness. So
yeah. Well, we can move forward. We have to move forward, and I think, if people consider us sort of aggressive and arrogant and so forth, maybe that's their problem.
I think people are ready to move forward. I think definitely the conversations that have been raised this year in particular, and the conversations and the amount of allyship that we've seen from other people, I think people are definitely ready to move forward in these conversations. So the struggle shouldn't remain for too long. Hopefully we can move forward quickly. Hopefully. But I think that's our hour coming to an end. So I guess I'm going to say thank you both for joining me. It's been great to sit with you and have such a great conversation. I really hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah.
And from the looks of the comments, people are wanting to see it again soon. So
fantastic.
It would be great if we could get another sit down.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And it has been, for me, it sometimes being, being Black female managing in a very white environment, you know, a lot of the time it's quite lonely. So it's been really, really lovely just to share our journeys and, you know, our grumbles, but then also our laughter as well. You know, there's been a lot of laughter, and I
and our
really
shared
like that.
experiences. I think I
Yeah.
haven't actually had the opportunity to sit down with other Black women and speak about some of the shared experiences I've had. So it's been wonderful, and it's been very helpful for me in particular. So thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's
Good
the hour.
time.
That's us, yeah.
Okay. Right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody. Thank you all
Bye.
for joining us. Bye.
Bye.